The BBN Report, where we talk all things college football around these parts. And it's that famous time of year again where we are starting our prediction videos for each team, going game by game, telling you who I think they're going to beat and who I think these teams are going to lose to. And I figured, what better way to start out than with this channel we call the BBN Report than with the Kentucky Wildcats. And the Kentucky Wildcats have reason to be optimistic this season. But before we get into that, just want to say that I want to try to get 2 of these videos out every week. Now, with my work schedule, I don't think I can do more than that. I think 2 will probably be the optimal amount of these videos that I can do. Just because I usually do work 10, 12 hours a day, and here lately the weekends as well. So trying to get more than 2 videos out would be a very daunting task in of itself. Not to mention, these videos do take a while to make, film, and edit. So if there is a certain team you want me to preview specifically, just comment down below and I'll try to get to it. I do have certain teams I'm already planning on doing and I've been taking notes for. But if there is a certain team you want to see, like I said a while ago, just comment down below and I'll definitely try to get to it. This is definitely an exciting time of the year. But before we get into this Kentucky football preview, why don't you guys go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe button, because a little love does go a long way and can really help out the channel. And let's go ahead and talk about the Kentucky Wildcats. And this is a Kentucky Wildcats team that's definitely interesting to talk about. And there is reason for Big Blue Nation to have a lot of optimism going into this season, especially with what Stoops has built down there in Lexington. Stoops has gotten Kentucky football to a place where the fans honestly are more excited about football than they are basketball. I want you to think about that. The kind of culture that Stoops has created has Kentucky fans more excited about football than basketball. That is something that I don't think anybody thought would ever happen. I don't think Kentucky fans ever thought they'd be in a situation where they'd be more excited about an upcoming football season than a basketball season. And just the way Stoops has Kentucky competing in the SEC, and he has them currently sitting at a spot where they kind of 8 wins is almost guaranteed, I think, for a lot of fans just going, when you do the schedule surfing thing. But I don't think it's too out of the realm of possibility for people to really start looking at Kentucky and saying they're a 9-win-a-year program. And that's crazy to think about where Kentucky was before Stoops got there. I mean, before Stoops got there, they had that joke artist, Joker Phillips, and they were losing to Eastern Kentucky, for God's sake. But the way I want to structure these videos, I do want to talk about the pieces that Kentucky has coming back, at least the key pieces on both sides of the ball, and certain key departures from the program as well. But first up, Kentucky does bring back quarterback Will Levis, who was very good last year for the Wildcats, with the exception being a couple of games. And he is actually, a lot of offseason talk has been built around Will Levis, not just from Kentucky fans, but the national media outlet as well. He's had some early season Heisman talks, which off-season Heisman talks, which is, I don't think is entirely warranted, because he was a good quarterback last year, but I don't think he exactly wowed anybody. And even, I think it was CBS Sports that had Will Levis going #1 in their mock draft, which I think kind of really blew my mind. So I'm not exactly sure where they're getting all this from, but he was a very solid quarterback last year, and arguably the best quarterback for Kentucky in the last 10, 15-ish years. Going all the way back to maybe Mike Hartline. One thing that could be a blow for Kentucky is that offensive coordinator, after 1 year, Liam Cohen, decided to return to the Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams. And also gone on the offensive side of the ball was Kentucky's leading receiver and easily best wide receiver, and Wan'Dale Robinson, who single-handedly rewrote the UK record books for receiving. You look up the receiving records for Kentucky, and basically it's nothing but Wan'Dale Robinson's name, because he was just absolutely electric last year for Kentucky, and it's one of the biggest reasons why they were able to get to that 10-win plateau after they defeated Iowa in the Citrus Bowl last year. Now, replacing Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be very difficult for Kentucky, But they have done a pretty good job, I think, in surrounding Will Levis with talent to throw the ball to besides Robinson for this season. They have a Virginia Tech transfer by the name of Tavion Robinson, and they also had a group of four-star prospects come in this year that are going to be freshmen, and Dane Key and Berrien Brown to help lead the way. And I honestly think that tight end Keaton Upshaw is going to be a huge factor too. I think they're going to start throwing the ball to Upshaw a little bit more this season. And I think it would be a very good thing to do because whenever Kentucky does get the tight ends involved, I think Kentucky's offense goes to another level. So hopefully the new offensive coordinator for UK can find some way to get Keaton Upshaw more involved, as well as just spraying the ball all around to the receivers. Now, one thing we do know about Kentucky is they do run the ball better than almost anybody in the country, and they run the ball with the best of them. They do bring back the leading rusher, Chris Rodriguez Jr., from last season, but it's looking like he's going to miss the first few games of the season, maybe 4 games of the season, for I believe it was a driving under the influence charge he got picked up with. So there's been a lot of talks. That's kind of still up in the air. If not, he's going to be playing at all this season or just be under suspension. UK's kind of holding that pretty close to the chest and not really giving too much information about what's going on about Rodriguez. I personally think he's going to have a few games suspension and then he'll be back. But that, like I said, that's still all up in the air for Kentucky. Now, after Kentucky's Citrus Bowl win over Iowa last year, there was a big-time fear among fans that there was going to be a complete overhaul on defense, and the defense is going to take a huge step back this season. And it's not looking like that's going to be the case by any means. Between getting safety Tyron Algian, I've always struggled with his name. I'm sorry. Names are never my strong suit for pronouncing, ever. And linebackers DeAndre Square, Jaquez Jones, and Jordan Wright elected to use their extra year of eligibility from the COVID year to return to Lexington for one more season. And there'll still at least be 4 new starters on Kentucky's defense, which is not anywhere near as bad as it could have been, and I definitely think that helps for the optimism for this season on the defensive side of the ball. And it's definitely looking like it's time for that highly touted 2020 class to step up and really be an impact on this year, especially on the defensive line. That's going to be where a lot of those new starters are going to be. That's going to be that defensive line, helping hopefully stop the run and get some sacks this year. Like I said, I was talking about how that 2020 class, what for at least on the defensive side, was a highly touted class, and this is the reason why this was a highly touted class. The group was led by former 5-star signee Justin Rogers at nose guard, Octavius Oxidine, Travion Riebka, and Josiah Hayes, all 4-star prospects from 2020 that will end up joining Rogers there on the defensive line. So like I said, it's really time for those guys to step up. They're going to be starters, I'm assuming, in September when they host Miami for the first game of the year. So we'll definitely see if those guys step up and end up being good players. I definitely like where Kentucky's defense can do this season. And not to mention, I did forget to bring this up a while ago when I was talking about the secondary and but Stoops did manage to bring in 2 key additions to the secondary via transfer portal in Keandron Smith from Ole Miss and Zion Childress from Texas State. Definitely going to help out their secondary a little bit, who was not very good defending the pass last year. I mean, that's very apparent from games against Tennessee and Mississippi State. Now it's time to get the schedule up, and we can start going through the schedule game by game, and I can tell you who I think Kentucky's going to beat and who I think Kentucky is going to lose to this season. And first up, on September 3rd, Kentucky hosts Miami of Ohio. And obviously, this should be a win for Kentucky. I don't see this game really being competitive, especially not with the talent that Kentucky has versus Miami. And we're at a point in time now where Big Blue Nation's not scared to lose games like this, because there was a time that Kentucky would play this kind of game and be like, wow, can we beat Eastern Kentucky? Can we beat Miami? And it was kind of a toss-up, but nowadays, with the way that Kentucky's competing in the SEC, there's no more fears of losing to games like this and losing to teams like this. So obviously I think this is going to be a win for Kentucky. But then week 2, Kentucky travels on the road to begin their SEC slate at Florida. And this is a brand new Florida team for the most part. They have a brand new head coach in Billy Napier, because gone is Dan Mullen. That 4 years was a bitter disappointment from Florida fans who were for some reason insanely excited when Florida hired Dan Mullen. But they hired new head coach Billy Napier, who I think is a home run of a hire for Florida. I definitely think he's going to get Florida back on the right track and get Florida back to where people expect Florida football to be. And he was great at Louisiana. I'm pretty sure he got them to their conference title game like 4 years in a row or something like that. And I know that they were conference champions this past season, beating Appalachian State in the title game. But I don't know if he can turn it completely around in the first year. We all know that Florida did not exactly recruit to the standard of Florida last season. And it's looking like Anthony Richardson is going to be QB1 this year. And this was a guy that for some reason Florida fans really wanted to see a lot last year. Me was in there personally. I didn't think he looked very good. It was just they kind of played the quarterback hokey pokey last year. And neither one of them ever looked pretty good, but I think Richardson can look a lot better if he knows he is QB1, takes all the first team reps, and is able to just go out there and just play. Especially, I think that will definitely help Richardson out quite a bit. I think Florida's biggest issue is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. We all know Florida was not very good defensively last year. And for that reason, I just don't see them making too much of an improvement in year 1 under Napier. And it's for a lot of these reasons. I have Kentucky winning at Florida. I know people might think that's kind of crazy, but Kentucky's first win in 31 years against Florida came 4 years ago when Kentucky knocked off the Gators in the Swamp. And I think Kentucky will do it yet again this year. And it's kind of crazy to think that this game right here, because I do think this game could potentially go either way. Just because if you look over the past 7-ish years or so, Kentucky and Florida games have been incredibly close. And a lot of them have came down to the last minute. Just like last year's did. Kentucky had to get a goal line stand at home to beat Florida last year. And there's been several times that, Florida won in like the last couple of minutes of the game. So I don't think this year probably won't be any different. But I do think Kentucky will find a way to get it done. I do think Kentucky is the better team than Florida. I think Kentucky's more talented than Florida, which is just crazy to say. But it is arguably the truth. And for all of those reasons, first-year head coach, not so great defense, and an unproven quarterback in Richardson are the reasons why I have Kentucky going to the Swamp and beating the Gators. Then Kentucky comes home for a couple of weeks, and they end up hosting Youngstown State and Northern Illinois, obviously both of which I think are going to be wins for the Cats. I just don't see these teams coming into Lexington and winning. I just don't see Kentucky playing bad enough to lose either one of these games. But then Kentucky goes on the road to Ole Miss. Now this is an Ole Miss team that for some reason a lot of people are down on, and honestly I don't see why. I understand Matt Corral has left, and they have lost a lot of key pieces off of last year's team. But for the first time ever last year, Ole Miss won 10 games, and a lot of people think they're going to take a step back. I actually do not. I still think Ole Miss is going to be a very good team in 2022. No, I get it. They lost Matt Corral and All-American defensive end Sam Williams. They're both in the NFL now. Now, this is why a lot of people think that Ole Miss is going to take a step back this year. Not only losing those two guys, but they now are gone to their 3 leading receivers, their top 4 rushers, and top linebackers are all gone. Also departed is offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby and co-defensive coordinator DJ Durkin, who ended up going to Texas A&M, and Jeff left and went to Oklahoma. Now, you might be saying, okay, they lost all these pieces, so there's no way Ole Miss is going to be any good this year. False. Lane Kiffin used the transfer portal better than anybody did this season. Or should I say this offseason, and has the consensus number 1 transfer class in America in a landslide. and has literally filled all of these holes that Ole Miss was going to have this season. And I just don't see where Ole Miss has this huge drop-off. Not to mention, I think Lane Kiffin is one of the best offensive minds in college football today. And he's honestly one of the better coaches in the SEC, in my opinion. And Ole Miss is a lot of fun to watch under Lane Kiffin. And I just don't see Kentucky beating Ole Miss. For all of those reasons, Kentucky has struggled in the past against high-powered offenses in general. And just good offensive teams find a way to beat Kentucky no matter, seems like here lately, like no matter what. And between Lane Kiffin's offensive prowess and all the guys that Ole Miss has coming in, I think Ole Miss beats Kentucky. And with it being on the road in Oxford, I'd honestly think this is a game Kentucky could honestly lose by 17 points. I wouldn't be shocked if the game was really close, and I wouldn't be shocked if the game was a blowout, but I just don't see Kentucky going on the road and getting a win in Oxford. After the loss at Ole Miss, Kentucky comes back home, and they take on a South Carolina team who they have, in the last, 8 years or so, have absolutely dominated South Carolina. And South Carolina is a team who definitely overachieved last year in Shane Beamer's first year, going 7-6. They made a bowl game and won that bowl game, I believe, finishing 7-6. And this Gamecocks team, fans are excited about. You go into any SEC group on Facebook, or you go into college football groups on Facebook, the South Carolina fans are excited about this, and I think it all stems from landing Oklahoma quarterback Spencer Rattler, who was very good his freshman year at Oklahoma. And so I think that is a lot of the reason to be optimistic for South Carolina. But other than that, I just don't see where South Carolina has done enough to really improve themselves. I guess Spencer Rattler is a really good quarterback when you got the right pieces around him. But this is a game that Kentucky is going to beat South Carolina once again. It's almost becoming... I'm not going to pick South Carolina to beat Kentucky until they've proven that they can beat Kentucky again. And this is just a game that I think Kentucky will win. I think they're definitely superior almost all the way around South Carolina for the most part. Unless Spencer Rattler comes out and just throws the ball out of his mind against Kentucky, this is a game I think Kentucky will win. After the win against South Carolina, Kentucky will host Mississippi State, a team who they lost to a year ago. And in that game, Kentucky looked absolutely horrible. That was easily the worst game Kentucky played last season against an average at best Mississippi State team. And not only did it make it worse that was their worst played game, that came after a bye week for Kentucky. And they came out and laid a complete total goose egg against Will Rogers and that Mississippi State air raid offense. But Mississippi State does have 8 returning players last year that were really vital in the success of that offense from a year ago. And helped land them in top 30 nationally in offense. And of course, Will Rogers returns at quarterback for Mississippi State. And Will Rogers basically rewrote the record books at Mississippi State. Last year, Rogers set the single-season school record for completions with 505, passing yardage 4,739, and touchdowns with 36. He also set numerous single-game records as well. But with all that being said, I think that Kentucky gets their revenge this year at home. For some reason, Kentucky's lost like the last 9 meetings on the road at Stark Vegas. I drew a blank there where Mississippi State plays. And this is a really strange and quote-unquote rivalry game because neither team can seem to get a win at the other team's place. Kentucky has dominated Mississippi State in recent years at home, and Mississippi State has dominated Kentucky in recent years down in Stark Vegas. And all those things combined with how bad Kentucky played last year, the home dominance in this series, and the fact that I think Kentucky will actually circle this game on the calendar just because if you watched any of the post-game press conferences last year after this game, the Kentucky players were absolutely distraught with themselves and how poorly they played in this game. And for those reasons, I think Kentucky gets the win over Mississippi State this year. All right, guys, little change of pace here for a second. When I was editing this video, I noticed that when my camera shut off, it did not record my part about Kentucky's game with Tennessee. And Tennessee is an interesting team because Josh Heupel seems to have them going back in the right direction, which, me being a Kentucky fan, is not good news for me, as much as I hate Tennessee. But it does look like he has them trending in the right direction. And that they bring back Hendon Hooker this year, who was absolutely electric last year in his lone season in Tennessee so far. And Tennessee is interesting because, as we all know, Tennessee doesn't necessarily run an offense. They try to line the ball up and essentially snap it as quick as possible and try to catch the defense off guard, which is what they were able to do against Kentucky on numerous occasions last year when they played each other. I mean, the very first play from the line of scrimmage was a 75-yard touchdown, for Christ's sakes. And that's just how they were able to beat Kentucky last year. I mean, I think Tennessee only had the ball for like 7 or 8 minutes of that entire game and managed to beat Kentucky because just the way their offense runs. And that ended up being a 45-42 ball game, if I remember right. That just shows kind of how poor Kentucky's able to defend the pass last year. And it's for a lot of those reasons that I think, and we all know Tennessee's defense was pretty bad last year. As not to mention, there's not like their defense got much rest either. That was one of the drawbacks of Tennessee running the kind of offense that they did run last year. But for all them kind of reasons, I have Tennessee picking up their yearly win against Kentucky. Doesn't matter how good Tennessee is, how bad Tennessee is, how good Kentucky is, or how bad Kentucky is. It just seems like Tennessee gets that win over Kentucky every single year. And honestly, I don't think this year's going to be much different. And I don't think I'm not leaning this way because the game's in Knoxville this year. I just think Tennessee will pick up their yearly win against Kentucky. Like I said before, it doesn't matter how good or bad Tennessee is. They beat Kentucky every single year. And I don't see that changing this. Right, take 2 here since my camera decided to randomly shut off on its own there for literally no reason at all. Kentucky's final 3 games this year are all at home for the regular season. And that's a stretch that begins with Vanderbilt, Georgia, and Louisville. And they get that stretch started off with Vanderbilt. Let's face it, this is a win for Kentucky. Vanderbilt is the worst team in the SEC, arguably in the landslide. I mean, like the over-under for Vanderbilt this year set like 1.5 by Vegas. And if they were to actually get 2 wins, I think anything more than 2 wins, I think would be a miracle for Vanderbilt. So yes, Kentucky's going to dominate Vanderbilt. This will be a win for them. Then Kentucky stays at home for their last SEC game of the year against Georgia, the national defending champion Georgia Bulldogs. And this will be a loss. I'm not going to drag this one out too much. This is going to be a loss. Yes, Georgia lost a lot of players off last year. They do bring their national championship winning quarterback Stetson Bennett back this year. But Georgia recruits absolutely out of this world. And I just don't see where Kentucky's going to find a way to beat Georgia. I think Georgia's more talented in every facet of the team between the 2 teams here. I just don't see where Kentucky can muster up a win against Georgia. Doesn't matter if it's in Lexington. It's down there. Of course, like I was saying before, somebody wants to blare their music 9,000 decibels in the air. But I just don't see where Kentucky can get a win over Georgia. It doesn't matter if this game gets played in Lexington, gets played down there between the hedges, down there in Athens, or if they're playing this game on the moon. Georgia's going to win this game. And it's as much as Kentucky has improved, they're just not on Georgia's level yet. They're kind of in that wrong right. You got You look at the SEC right now, the elite of the elite is Alabama and Georgia. And Kentucky and a lot of other teams are in that next tier down. And I just don't see where Kentucky can compete in this game and realistically win it. I think the game will probably be a good game, but Georgia's going to come out on top. And then Kentucky wraps up their regular season with their annual rivalry with Louisville this year. And this is a rivalry that is starting to be dominated by Kentucky. And right now, Louisville is in a bit of a flux because right now they're just kind of a dumpster fire over there in Louisville. And I definitely think that this could be a game just like the last few years. It's probably going to get out of hand and it's probably going to be dominated by Kentucky, especially at home. In the way, the kind of home field atmosphere and advantage that Kentucky has, well, the Big Blue Nation has created for Kentucky at home games here the last couple of years, I think that Kentucky will dominate Louisville. And that pretty much does it for this video. If you're a Kentucky fan watching me, or if you're watching me in this video and you're not a Kentucky fan, comment down below and you tell me if you think that I got it right, or if you think Kentucky's only going to win 9 games, but you think I got the 3 losses wrong, or if you think they're going to win more games, less games. Comment down below and tell me what you guys think. Like I said before, if there's any particular team you want me to cover and preview, just go ahead and comment it down below. I'm definitely open to suggestions on who to do these preview videos for. And I'll go ahead and I'll catch you guys in the next one.